Hi, thanks for watching BibleMountain.com. In this video we're going to read from Exodus 22 and learn that we must visit widows and orphans. In our society, when we think about widows, orphans, immigrants, minorities, and the poor, we tend to fall into the trap of thinking that they just need money. And since we have a welfare system, we tend to sit back and let the government take care of the problem. In this video we're going to read from Exodus 22, and that chapter reveals Yahweh's heart about the vulnerable. Yahweh strongly warned the Israelites not to oppress those who are unfortunate and widows, orphans, and the vulnerable. We're also going to read from James 1 that tells us that we should also visit widows and orphans. It's not enough to refrain from oppressing them. We also have to be proactive in helping them and encouraging them. So let's get started with Exodus 22. The context of this is the Israelites are at Mount Sinai. God is giving them a culture. The verses we're going to read today is part of a larger passage where God is giving the Israelites a criminal justice system. So let's get started reading at verse 16. If a man seduces a virgin who is not engaged and lies with her, he must pay a dowry for her to be his wife. If her father absolutely refuses to give her to him, he shall pay money equal to the dowry for virgins. You shall not allow a sorceress to live. Whoever lies with an animal shall surely be put to death. He who sacrifices to any god other than to Yahweh alone shall be utterly destroyed. You shall not wrong a stranger or oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Now notice the phrase, not wrong a stranger. There's a clear prohibition here that the Israelites were not supposed to wrong a stranger. It also uses the word oppress. Notice the word for. That indicates that God was about to tell them why they were not supposed to wrong a stranger. And the answer was that at one time the Israelites had been strangers in the land of Egypt, and God essentially told the Israelites that they were not supposed to do to others what had been done to them. Let's keep reading at verse 22. You shall not afflict any widow or orphan. If you afflict him at all, and if he does cry out to me, I will surely hear his cry, and my anger will be kindled, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives shall become widows, and your children fatherless. So notice a prohibition here. They were not supposed to afflict any widows or orphans. Notice the word here. Yahweh told the Israelites that if they did afflict an orphan and the orphan cried out, then God would hear. And then notice the word anger. God told the Israelites that he would get angry if they afflicted an orphan. In our culture, we don't like to think too much about the anger of God, but the anger of God is real, and God warned the Israelites here that he would get angry if they afflicted an orphan. Let's keep reading there at verse 25. If you lend money to my people, to the poor among you, you are not to act as a creditor to him. You shall not charge him interest. If you ever take your neighbor's cloak as a pledge, you are to return it to him before the sun sets, for that is his only covering. It is his cloak for his body. What else shall he sleep in? And it shall come about that when he cries out to me, I will hear him, for I am gracious. Now in these verses, God was talking about lending money. Notice the word poor. He was specifically talking about lending money to poor people. And there was a prohibition here. Notice the word not. When they lent money to poor people, they were not supposed to act as creditors. And notice the word not again. They were not supposed to charge interest. Another illustration of God looking out for the poor and the vulnerable. Notice the word pledge. In this scenario, something that would happen is when you loan money to somebody, you might request a pledge, a piece of property that the person could give you to promise that they would come back and repay the loan. In this scenario, if they took as a pledge somebody's cloak, God prohibited them from keeping it overnight because it might be their only covering, and then if they kept it overnight, then this person would not have anything to cover himself with while he was sleeping. Again, see the word here. God told the Israelites that if they did oppress someone and they cried out, that God would hear them. And notice the word gracious. God reminded the Israelites that he is gracious. Particularly in this context, he is gracious to the poor and the afflicted and the unfortunate, and God promised that he would defend them and look out for them. Now let's read a verse from James 1. This is verse 27. Pure and undefiled religion in the sight of our God and Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained by the world. Notice those first 4 words, pure and undefiled religion. Just give a little bit of thought to those words. The idea of pure and undefiled religion. That's what James is defining here. And pure and undefiled religion is partly defined on how you treat orphans and widows. Again, that illustrates the importance that God places on how we treat orphans and widows. And notice the word visit. The emphasis here is being proactive. Pure and undefiled religion is being proactive and going out and doing something positive to help orphans and widows and encourage them. And it's summed up in that word, to go out and visit the orphans and widows in their distress. So again, in our society, when we think about widows, orphans, and minorities and the poor, we fall into the trap of thinking that they just need money. And since we have a welfare system, we tend to sit back and just let the government take care of the problem. But Exodus 22 reveals Yahweh's heart. Yahweh is concerned about the poor and the unfortunate, and God is looking out for them. God prohibited the Israelites from oppressing those who are vulnerable. Likewise, James 1 tells us that we need to proactively visit the widows and orphans and encourage them and help them in their time of distress and pain. If you haven't already signed up for my email list, please do so. First of all, it is free. By signing up, you will get immediate access to my free content as soon as it is released. It'll be delivered right to your email inbox. This is the best way to make sure you don't miss out on any of my free content. To sign up, go to BibleMountain.com, click on follow, and there will be a place there to enter your email address. Once again, thank you for watching BibleMountain.com.